Cynthia Hardy is a radio host in Columbia, South Carolina. That's Joe Wilson's district. And old friend Ron Reagan is the host of the Ron Reagan Show on Air America Radio. Cynthia.
I fear that we're headed toward a very racially polarizing climate in this country, and Joe Wilson's comments serve to further define that divide. When I mentioned racial polarization in this country and the fact that we appear to be moving in that direction, keep in mind the climate that we have just come out of. The climate of I want my country back from these health care forums, and these were not people of color. People who said, I don't want the president indoctrinating my children, when heretofore Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter and George Herbert Walker Bush, George W., Bill Clinton, and now Barack Obama, well, they all have something in common, but then there's something very different too, and what is that difference? So it doesn't appear to be about policy, it appears to be about race.
Now, Cynthia is right that Joe Wilson may have unmasked himself, but I think he also unmasked the Republican Party to a large extent. A great number of Republicans, I think, are really in the Joe Wilson camp, if you will. They may be urging him to apologize now, but they're not really refuting what he said. And what he said, of course, was a lie in and of itself. Barack Obama is not proposing that illegal immigrants be covered. There's no legislation that proposes that. H.R. 3200 coming out of the House specifically mentions that illegal immigrants can't be covered here. Joe Wilson ought to know that, and maybe he does. So he's either ignorant or he himself is a liar.
Let's stick with Ron. You answer this, and then Cynthia, you pick up on it. And the question is, we've had the birthers for the past 4 or 5 months, people who don't believe Barack Obama was born in the United States. We had what I've regarded as a truly depressing several-day period where people were protesting a president of the United States speaking to school children.
You have to wonder, is this disrespect for the office, or is this disrespect specifically for this man? And I tend to think, and maybe Cynthia is better positioned to comment on this than I am, I do think that there's an element of race here. I do think that Joe Wilson may have held his tongue if a white president was up there behind that podium. I think it's almost creepy, if I can use the word, the lack of respect that the Republicans show to this man who is, after all of our president. He's our president, and he deserves a certain amount of respect just based on that. And the fact that he is not getting it, and so obviously not getting it from Republicans, I think is very disturbing.
Cynthia, go ahead.
In addition to that, I think that is very disturbing, too, that he's not getting it from many members of the Republican Party. But when you take into account as well that a number of people in certain segments of the population pick up on that behavior, and then they take it to the next level. So what you get is this blatant disregard for the office of the presidency, which is extremely un-American. And so where is the outcry for that? Now, I've seen and heard a number of people decry it today, but I think that that depressing period that Ron mentioned, when people were fearful about indoctrination and what the President of the United States would say to school children, I mean, we need to stop at this point, and regardless of anybody's political ideology, recognize the dangerous position that we are in terms of racial polarization. Getting lost, the audacity of any member of that body to disrupt it in that way. For Christ's sakes, it made us appear a third world country. This is the United States of America.
Well, Great Britain, they do it every week. But
the Prime Minister talks about salesmanship. We all know his brilliant salesmanship. This is the man that sold gold at the bottom of the market. That's the problem with the Prime Minister. He's got nothing to sell and he's useless at selling it. And while we're at it, I've got a bit more advice for him. This is the Prime Minister who went on American Idol with more makeup on than Barbara Cartland. This is the Prime Minister who sits in number 10 Downing Street. He sits in number 10 Downing Street, wondering...
Order. Leader of the opposition.
He sits in... Oh, hold on. He sits in number 10 Downing Street, waiting for Shakira to call, waiting for George Clooney to come to tea. I got a bit of advice from him. Why doesn't he give up the PR and start being a PM?
And it is just one element in a lot of disturbing behavior, and you've cited some of it at the town hall meetings and this business about President Obama speaking to school children and that suddenly being indoctrination. This is going off the rails, and I think that we who work in the media, it's incumbent upon us to point that out to people, that this isn't just a political disagreement. This isn't just business as usual in Washington and the usual back and forth. Something very wrong and disturbing has been happening out there in the country, and we need to try and put our finger on it.
The 43rd President of the United States lied the nation into war, lied 4,343 of his fellow citizens to death in that war, lied about upholding the Constitution, and lied about weapons of mass destruction. He lied about how he reacted to al-Qaeda before 9/11, and he lied about how he reacted to al-Qaeda after 9/11. He lied about getting bin Laden, and he lied about not getting bin Laden. He lied about nation building in Iraq, lied about the appearance of new buildings in the nation of Iraq, and lied about embassy buildings in nations like Iraq. He lied about trailers with mobile weapons labs in them, and he lied about trailers with Cuban prostitutes in them. He and his administration lied by the counting of one nonprofit group 532 times just about the links between al-Qaeda and Iraq that did not exist. Only 28 of those were by that president, but he made up for that by lying 231 times about WMD. And yet not once did an elected Democratic official shout out during one of George W. Bush's speeches and call him a liar.
Why don't you initiate the impeachment of President Bush? I see the enthusiasm in this room for that, but there's only one place where there's more enthusiasm for the Democrats to initiate the impeachment of George Bush, and that is in the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives. They would like nothing better than for us to do that instead of do things that are good for the American people. His days in the White House are drawing to a close.
Even when the president was George W. Bush, even when he was assailed from sidelines like my own, even when the lies came down so thick the nation needed a hat, he was still the president, and if he did not earn any respect, the office he held demanded respect. That is the line Congressman Wilson crossed last night when he shouted, "You lie," at this president of the United States. Not the respect line, the stupid line. It would be you who would shout out, "You lie," at a biracial president of the United States.
Turn them off! This is a theater of the absurd, my friends. This is the theater of the absurd.